So morning, one and all. It's Mike O'Neill speaking. We may as well get underway. So hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar, which is covering obviously the highlights and major enhancements for EDGECAM 2025.1. I'm Mike O'Neill, and I'm delighted that you've made time today to join me for the next 30 to 40 minutes as I present live demos of EDGECAM 2025.1. So let's move forward straight into the broadcast, straight into the webinar. First little thing that I'd like to talk about is CAD support. So I normally call this keeping up with the Joneses. So we obviously have many different CAD partners that we load solid models from into EDGECAM. You can see all the major runners and riders on the slide. Obviously, if any of these particular vendors change version, Solid Edge goes up to 2026, for instance, then obviously we'll issue a service pack which will keep us abreast of that particular version. Of course, if you've got any questions today, try and place them into the chat window. May not be able to get to them live today, but certainly I'll answer them when we conclude the webinar. Onto technical feedback. So my thanks to my colleagues on support desk for some feedback that they've given us. Obviously the release has been out a couple of weeks now, so we're beginning to see some useful questions coming through from the support desk. This is to do really with the portal. So some of you are not running recent versions of EDGECAM. Obviously today we're talking 2025.1, but you might still be back at indeed 2022. You naughty fellows, you should really be upgrading, but I understand why you don't. But if that is the case, you might be experiencing problems getting through into our customer portal. That's because the customer portal and its security access has been upgraded and it's working with the latest CLS. So if you are having that particular problem, then fear not, you can install the license manager individually from the EDGECAM 2025 install set, or indeed it is actually now on the portal to download. So that's really just for people who are running older versions of EDGECAM. Also, some of you will be using the old legacy probing. So you're used to seeing this particular menu, the old probing menu. This has now been removed, so you'll now no longer see it in 2025.1. We're working with modern day probing cycles, which uses probing features. So if you're in that category, then fear not. Obviously, you can get around this problem by going through the quick search menu or importing your own theme from 2024 through into 2025. And of course, your existing parts will also work as well. So let's go for the main enhancements, the machine cycle enhancements. First one I want to talk about is the profiling cycle. So this is a cycle that would obviously be used in both turning and in mill turn. And this is to do with undercut profile. So when you have asked for undercut, you'll have noticed that helical will have been switched off in previous versions. Now we discover in 2025.1 that helical is now supported. You would obviously be using one of those type of cutters, able to get through to an undercut. And I want to enjoy the benefit of helical. So that is now completely doable in 2025.1. It obviously gives us a better tool path. Your surface texture should be better as well, keeping the tool on cut better for the carbide, and obviously there's a cycle time saving to be enjoyed because you're not leading in and leading out. Another enhancement, actually, this is a brand new cycle. Some of you may have heard of this before because it was previewed in 2024.1, so it's been on test and thoroughly road tested for the past year. Some people call this the chicane cycle. So basically it follows the least course of release of resistance, if you wish, the straightest line. So it's very good for face milling flat surfaces which have got not just a circular shape like a flange or something like that you'd meet in oil and gas, but any type of shape. It will find the shortest route across the part. It's going to be very, very usable. Lots of parameters in here that you'll be used to seeing. Certainly check fixtures, consistent behavior that we've seen throughout roughing cycles, profiling cycles. It won't take you a lot of time to learn. We also have support for pick the solid body or create a feature and pick the solid face as well. I know we also have got all waveform inside the cycle. So that's quite an interesting one that we'll spend some time on checking out in the live demos. Inside the machine simulator, and obviously this affects everybody, not just millers and turners, we now have the ability to leave the view on when we do rotate, pan, zoom with view comparison. So you'll know that the blue, the red, the green colors that we get from view comparison would have been switched off, where as soon as we begin to zoom and pan, it's now retained. So this is a really, really good enhancement because lots of people have asked for this, and it's extremely useful to be able to zoom, pan, and lock into one particular view with the color scheme still on. If you wish to go back to the old way of doing it, then just go into options and turn back on ray traced option. A quick one for the face mill. A lot of people will know that if you've got a large diameter cutter on a component face that's smaller than that particular diameter cutter, you can do a single pass by making the step over 90, 95, 110%. But it does actually confuse the rule of climb, conventional, and optimize. Optimize wasn't quite working. So there's excuse me, a new parameter in there called Optimise Lace Layer Start, which will get around any sort of issues that you might get with the optimize rule. And again, we'll see this when we look at a live demonstration. Parallel lace cycle. And again, this is for people who haven't got no plane switching, so not able to do G17, 18, 19. You've got to go for the none option, which means you get lots and lots of code coming out in the program. If you want to go for really super accuracy, even though you've tuned out your tolerances and so on and so forth, you might still be suffering some accuracy issues. So what we now have inside that particular cycle is point distribution. Some of you may recognize that from 5-axis. So basically, we're able to distribute and create more and more CNC data, which therefore inherently gives you a better program and a better toolpath. Finally, something for the turners, so we'll be aware of path compensation created inside the CNC program. This wasn't supported inside the parting off cycle, and you would think, oh, parting off cycle, not very exciting, why would you need it? Well, of course, the parting off cycle is able to do cornering and chamfering, so we do need that ability. And you will, like this screenshot that we see here, you will notice that you aren't getting exactly the right shape of chamfer or corner when you're doing a part of. So with now that being supported in 2025, then it should be perfectly easy to do. And again, that's a high frequency request. And a lot of those final items that we spoke about are all high frequency requests from you, the users. So please keep coming in with those requests. So let's have a look at all that in the product itself. So here we have our profiling cycle. Simple, straightforward profiling cycle. What we're doing, we'll be using, in this case, a lollipop cutter. Doesn't necessarily need to be a lollipop cutter, any type of cutter that would support the undercut function. As you can see, we're rattling down this particular component shape here, but we are leading in and we are leading out, as you can see, and that costs us time. So the current cycle time here that you can see is 9 minutes and 12, and this is what we would have had to put up with in previous versions. But no, inside our profiling cycle, yep, we have undercut on, but what we now want to see is, yeah, we've got helical support. So that helical support means that the tool stays on touch. We get a better toolpath, obviously, because we are staying on touch, and the carbide is warmed the better. It's always keeping the heat in the carbide, and we've dropped down nearly 2 minutes because we're not having to use all the leading in and leading out. So that's one checkbox. Gives us quite a nice toolpath and an even better cycle time. So a win-win situation, really. Now we come to the race line cycle, chicane cycle. This is a quick experiment that I've done, because if we were to be faced with face milling a component of this shape, we might have gone for face milling or indeed the roughing cycle. So I've placed the 3 different cycles here on screen just so as we can have an experiment with them. So this is the race line cycle. If I just swathe it, you'll see how it covers the whole shape and it moves over the whole shape. I just simply pick that particular face. And this particular cycle is returning 3 minutes and 35 seconds. Now, if we look at the other possible cycles that we'd use in this particular case, well, let's just turn them all back on again. The next one that I would have maybe naturally have chosen is the face milling cycle. So the same face milling cycle, same fees and speeds, same step over. We've got 7 minutes and 10. And if we look at the traditional waveform cycle, and again, I have tried to use and been true to the feed speeds and step over. So here we've got a little bit of higher cycle time at 4 minutes and 51. So it could be an argument here, and a very strong argument, that using the new race line cycle would be a much simpler and a much better option. You just simply select the face and let it chicane its way over the component, finding the best track, as it were. So you'll find this in the advanced license, and that's the race line cycle. Now let's go a little bit deeper into that cycle. Let's just explore what it can and cannot do for us. So let's just go to a single part. Hopefully I've gone and persuaded you to use it by cycle time. So here we have the cycle again. Here's the race line finish, and I'll turn swathe on so we can see it's covering the majority of the component face. The cycle itself, again, as I open it, the usual leads and links that we'd see in all our cycles, the usual depths that we'd see in all our cycles, and certainly in the general tab, a lot of those parameters we have met before. So we've got a very, very low learning curve on this one. We should be able to hit the ground running almost straight away. In this case, I've just simply picked solid faces and picked the face feature. Okay, so let's take that into the machine simulator. Obviously the penultimate test for us. So I forgot about my fixtures. And of course, that's going to cause great annoyance to us. And what you may also see, it's missing out parts of the stock. So we really couldn't really be putting up with that. So of course, let's go back to the race line cycle and fix these problems. So we have our consistent use check fixtures command. So that will now sort out the scrap fixtures for sure. So now that's free of any bangs and bashes to the fixtures, but you will see that we're still missing that area there. And again, if I just replay that, play on again and turn on my view comparison, notice how view comparison now is staying on, even though I'm zooming and panning and rotating. That would have cleared the view in previous versions. So again, that was that enhancement with view comparison. But you'll see now, yeah, I've definitely got leftover areas of material. So this can be simply fixed here inside the race line cycle by placing a stock thickness, because what I've actually done is I picked the component which is a narrower face compared to the stock. Wanted to pick the component because it's obviously got the right levels and depths for me. So just placing stock thickness in there, run it back in again, and we'll find that we've got all the material is now thoroughly covered with no leftover. So that's a very nice advert for stock thickness protocol inside that particular cycle. Also, the cycle is sensitive to the size and shape of the tool. So if I were to change down the size of that tool from 16 millimeter, from 30 millimeter to 16 millimeter, the cycle now knows that you cannot use that tool because it will not fit across the faces. And it will tell me several times, which is good. Mm-hmm. So let's have a look at how can we fix this. So we can say turn on. We can now turn on the waveforming option. So this now understands that, okay, we're allowed to use some more step over to get us around the problem. So I've still got my 16 millimeter tool. But of course now the cycle isn't complaining at me, and it should and will cover all them areas without hitting the fixtures. And again, arguably a much quicker chicane cycle, call it the chicane cycle maybe. For you racing people, you'll know what chicane means perfectly. Okay, let's move forward. Quick one for the face mill cycle. So again, good old engineers, we think on our feet, and a lot of people will realize that if you use quite a large diameter cutter, this is a 100 millimeter cutter, just pick the face of our component and cross over 110% using optimized. And that's the relevant thing here. We've asked it to optimize it. So 100%, nice little tip or trick, means that it should be doing it in one pass. It's greater than the face of the component. But what you'll notice, it's actually defying me and using either a climb or conventional policy. And that's not what we bargained for. We definitely did say on the label, optimize it. So at the moment, this cycle is actually costing me time, 13 minutes and 52. So to guarantee that the cycle is always going to adhere to the optimized rule, a brand new parameter called Optimise Lace Layer Start. And we'll do the same to the other cycle. Two cycles just side by side, just to show some good example again. So again, we've gone from down nearly 3 minutes off that cycle, because now it should be adhering to the rule of optimize. Parallel lace cycle. Parallel lace cycle, really a cycle that's very common, used in all scenarios. And this is one for people who maybe on an older machine tool, you don't have the ability to do plane switching. So what we have here is that NC smoothing is being set to none. That's what we have to have on certain machine tools. We create our tool path. We obviously see the tool path inside the machine simulator. But once we get it onto the machine, we might be experiencing certain form problems, certain surface texture problems on the part. So we've done the due diligence, we've gone through the tolerancing, we've gone through step over, and it's still not giving us the best type of tool path. What we can do is we can now refine the tool path. Of course, the tool path in this instance is generated by lots of X, Y, and Z positions, because we've gone for the non option, have to go for the non option. We don't have plane switching. So of course, this is what we would expect, lots of code. If we check the code, we can do that by looking at properties. You'll see that we've nearly got around 20,000 lines of code. Now, if I could get that code up a little bit higher, it would mean I've got an inherently more accurate tool path. And that's what we now have with parallel lace cycle, because we have a new option in control for point distribution. So just put a rounding number. We'll generate the code again, and this will increase the amount of output, increase the amount of NC lines that we see in our program. So here's the program again. I left it in the editor. You may have noticed that. So we were around 20,000. Now we're at 27,000. So inherently, we must have a much better toolpath, more accurate, more points, more drop-down positions on the toolpath. And here's a little trick. If you don't know it, you can ask EDGECAM to insert the point data. And inserting the point data is actually the CNC program. So I've done this already. So I've dropped it onto a layer. So I've inserted point data for the 20,000 points. You can see, okay, got lots of points there. But if I now turn on the point data for the 27,000, you see there's an awful lot more points, and therefore inherently must be a lot better toolpath. And that's the 27,000 touch points. Okay, so that's the parallel lace cycle. But before we return to PowerPoint, we'll just have a look at the parting off cycle. for our turners. Of course, all those other cycles could have been used in mill turn as well. So this is our standard parting off cycle. If we just turn on suede, it's a very, very easy function to see. Straight away, you'll see that, oh dear, you know, we've got some inaccuracy here. And this would obviously be showing up inside the machine simulator, because of course, with machine simulator view comparison, let me remind you now that you can zoom, pan, etc. with view comparison on. You could switch it off if you wanted to. Not really sure why you want to, but you do have the ability to turn it off by turning back on the older version, which is ray traced. Don't really want to do that. So yeah, clearly I've got some leftover material here. This would have been the issue that we would have suffered from in previous versions. Now, if we go into our cycle, hey presto, we have our path compensation inside the cycle, inside the coordinates themselves. And then now we have a much inherently better tool path in this particular instance. Okay. Quick question coming in. The race line. Oh yes, race line is on the advanced cycle, on the advanced license. Okay, thanks for that question. Do try and pop some questions in there if you've got them. As I say, I'll happy to answer them if we can live. If not, I'll get back to you later today. Okay, so we're going to have a look at the tool store enhancements. Again, all these driven by yourselves, customers asking for more data inside the technology databases. So in previous versions, we've only had 3 types inside category, which really doesn't give us enough breadth of information. So now what we'll see in 2025.1 is we've got as many types as we like. So lots of customers will have lots of scenarios for feed and speed. It could be based on absolutely anything, not just material and not just carbide. Could actually be on the age of the machine tool or the state of the back end that they're using. So they want to be able to introduce more cutting data. So that's what we see here. So lots and lots of types that you can create your own scenarios for machining. The types also flush back into the tools themselves, and also the type is also flushed back into the cycles themselves. So not only are you picking up your material and your carbide type, but also it'll take a look at whatever you've set in the new technology settings for type, and that will influence your feed and speed as well. Again, something just for the turners. So with the turning tools, we've not been able to set a depth of cut that's been grayed out. Obviously, the millers will know that this has been on in all versions, but we obviously need to migrate this through into the turning area. So this is what we would have seen in 2024.1 and previous, but now 2025.1, we've got depth of cut. So we can set, again, specific feeds and speeds and cutting data for the depth of cut. And again, of course, the technology types will kick in for us as well. So that's almost like a double whammy in terms of being able to give better cutting information inside EDGECAM and also inside Strategy Manager as well. And this again would wash through into the cycles here. We just see a quick screenshot of the straight turning cycle. Now we have a bit more specialist information for you for the 5-axis license. And the first one, very, very important one, is for the standard 5-axis cycle, or what some of you might want to call the EDGECAM cycle. So this is something that all of us would have dealt with right at the beginning in the old days, I suppose. Flow line. So flow line is a new strategy which we now see inside the standard 5-axis cycle. It's a cycle, or it's a tool path that's just basically sweeping up and down a single face on the component, following either the long side or the short side. And again, extremely handy for quick finishing, quick flashing over a component. We also have additional check strategies inside our standard 5-axis cycle. This is what we would have seen. Now we get lots more facilities, a lot more way of controlling the tool path in 2025.1. And what we're obviously, if those of you who are familiar with the 5-axis cycle, the 5-axis environment, we're taking stuff out of the module works license, the advanced 5-axis license, and floating it back through into the 5-axis license, so everybody enjoys the power of most of the facilities that we now have inside 5-axis machining. Also inside the advanced 5-axis, we have automatic lead in and lead out, and we now have that inside the standard 5-axis cycle. And why would we want that? Because sometimes you do sit there scratching your head thinking, which one of the 6 or 7 different options shall I use for lead? If you now just say, well, let it do automatically, it's doing it for you. So it's just a quicker, easier way of you executing toolpath. And of course, the covert little issue here is that all that can be PCI'd. So we're not able to PCI macro an advanced 5-axis cycle, but we are able to PCI macro a standard 5-axis cycle. So the more capability that we have inside a standard 5-axis cycle, obviously the more inclined we are to use it, and therefore we can place it into a template. We therefore move naturally into the advanced 5-axis cycle, and this is actually within the ultimate license, where we introduced multi-axis machining in the last version. So multi-axis machining, we're basically moving all those 5 axes to move around quite a complex shape, either for finishing or for roughing. So with wall finishing, we now enjoy a third new strategy, which is parallel to floor. So we're morphing correctly from the floor straight up to the ceiling, and not just having two different options that we had before. So again, the more options, the better choices, the better tool paths. Yeah. And also that we'll find inside the multi-axis finishing cycle, when we use barrel cutters. So of course, you know, barrel cutters had a really big push on that in 2024, but within the cycle, we didn't have as many support or as much support as we'd wish to have in that particular finishing multi-axis machining cycle. So this is what you would have seen in 2024.1. This is what we now see in 2025.1, the full support for barrel cutters when we're inside the finishing command of the multi-axis machining cycle. So the more choices, the better the toolpath. And again, sticking with multi-axis machining, with wall finishing, we've now got more options. So we now have the ability to go automatic for lead in and lead out. So this is a little bit what I would maybe suggest is like our profiling cycle, where we're able now to overlap. So this is what we had in 2024. The lower area was blank basically. Now in the area, we've got extended toolpaths automatically. It will just push the toolpath a little bit further, as you see in my screenshot here, which therefore means that you're not running the risk of having an overlap which you could have had in 2024.1. And that will be further enhanced where you're able to state the overlap amount. At the moment, it's like 10% of the tool. So again, that's just a better surface quality of toolpath that we get from 2025.1. Now, I mentioned the multi-axis cycle. They were finishing strategies that I previously spoke about. Now I'm talking about the roughing strategy. Roughing strategy, all 5 axes moving around. Lots of linking would have gone on, moving up, moving down, keeping the tool safe. So again, if we can keep that to a minimum, the better. So 2024.1 did not give us the minimize links function. We now enjoy that facility in 2025.1, and that will give us quite a number of time saving that we'll get inside the cycle, inside the toolpaths themselves. Okay, so my PowerPoint reminds me to go to the product. Let's just open up our first example. Right. All right, so this is the standard 5-axis cycle that we'll see here. And the standard 5-axis cycle has a new strategy called flow line. And as we can see, the flow line cycle will just flow down the side wall of this part using, by the way, a barrel cutter here. So that's what it's designed to do. And it will do one face at a time. So in this particular case, I've gone for one face. If I just clear that face and say, just do this face for me, or yeah, let's just do that face for me. It'll pick those faces out individually and only do them faces. So it doesn't actually cover or see them as neighbors. It always sees them as individuals. And you'll see how it's moving along the short side of the face. We can edit that and ask it to go along the long side of the face. But how did I get it to do the two faces that we saw before? So again, a little tip or trick for us here. We can use the surface. We can go through into feature and create a group feature from the solid body, which is what we have here. And I've picked that particular face. So nice little enhancement that we have now within inside this particular functionality, the ability to do flow line. And of course, when we get these parameters correct, we say to ourselves, right, you know, I might not be using this functionality for the next 3 months or whatever. We do tend to forget some of the parameters that have been set through in here. Not just the fact that it's flow line, but it could also be the depth. It could also be the tool axis control, because these can be very important to us. Lots of things that we might not be able to remember when we repeat these cycles. So of course, this being, if you will, a 5-axis cycle, a 5-axis EDGECAM cycle, you can place this into a PCI template. I'll just drop that on the desktop. So it's now saved inside a PCI template. And if I bring back in another similar part and I say to myself, actually, this part we could do with the flow line, but I can't remember how I set that flow line cycle up before. It's no problem. Just go to your macro, browse, pick the macro up from before, and we'll use that macro right away. So we'll just punch up the cycle. This is the face that I want to flow line today. And of course, now I get the perfect tool path that I had 2 or 3 weeks ago, moving nicely down that face. So all them cycles that we use, or all them parameters that we use inside the 5-axis standard, can be PCI'd. Now we just get the tool moving down that face. Just let that continue its way down. Wanted to have a look at the Ultimate license as well, because in the Ultimate license we have quite a number of new facilities. One quick one, again, just concentrating on the standard 5-axis cycle. In this case, I've just asked it to move across the top face. Sometimes we do scratch our heads and we think, oh, you know, I've got all the cycle correct, but the most annoying bit is getting leads and links correct. Now you'll notice brand new parameter that we see here called automatic. So in this particular case, I'll just give it some ammunition to use. But you know, do I use this for radius to tangential, radius to vertical? It can be a little bit of a task at times. If you just say, just do it automatically, just let EDGECAM take the strain, it will produce an automatically led in and led out toolpath. And as we can see here, it does a pretty good job of it as well. There we go. Hide that one away. Let's just bring back in the next cycle. So the next cycle, some of you may not be too familiar with it. This is a multi-axis roughing cycle. This is in our Ultimate license range, multi-axis machining. Now, in this particular case, we're asking it to rough out the area. And as you can see here, we've got our cycle time at 4 minutes and 16 seconds. We can straight away now begin to enjoy extra cycle time savings, because we've got this new parameter called minimize the link. So we know what links are. Links are the movement of the tool from one through to another. So we did have that at 4 minutes. Now we brought it down to 3 minutes. So just one little check box makes a big difference for us. The other item that we had on here was the extend. I just moved down. So here we have another barrel cutter using the multi-axis machining cycle. And because it's a barrel cutter, we want to enjoy all the parameters that we would normally see in barrel cutter. And now this is a whole new array of what we got: 1, 2, 3, 3 more options for barrel cutter. So we've got the proper, what you may want to call the proper support for barrel cutter. So that's the first thing to talk about. The second item that in this particular case, I actually want to increase the toolpath time. What I want to do is when I join and exit the cut, I want to have a little bit of an extension, what we call extension or overlap in the profiling cycle. So in this particular case, it's given to us here in the extend toolpath area automatically. It will automatically extend the toolpath for me. In the future releases, we'll have a number in here where you're able to state how far you wish to extend it by. So to kind of prove it, you'll see that I've got another couple of seconds added to the toolpath because it's extending the toolpath for me. You might remember doing the screenshot on the PowerPoint earlier on. Okay, so we'll just move forward with our next bit of presentation. So coming towards the end now, some general enhancements to speak about. Now this is a real big one. So lots of users will use multiple data in the setup. So just think of lots and lots of components laid across a milling table, multi-loaded parts, or a tombstone part is maybe a very good example here. So lots of people have asked us for, can we have more information inside stock fixture and the setup pages and the property pages? Because of course, the more that you've got inside the windows, the more information you want to be able to use. So what we'll notice here is that more parameters, more fields have been fed into the stock and fixture command. So you'll see here that we've got a new comment, and that comment could be quite important because I want to know, is this fixture number 7 or 77? So rather than just having a bland name in there, it gives me the ability to specifically identify stock and fixture. And of course, that information also washes back into the setup window as well. Because again, in a multi-component setup part, it's going to be very busy. We want to be able to specifically know which particular fixture am I actually identifying. So the names of anything coming from your fixture manager are identified, and also any comments that you've placed inside stocks and fixtures are also identified through the setup window. And this is the sort of thing that we'd begin to see. You put a name in stock or fixture, or inside the fixture manager, it washes through into the feature window as well. Other one that I quickly like to talk about is in machine tool configuration, because we still do need to think about our lots of different machine configurations that come out on the marketplace, turn mill. This is in the MTM area. What we didn't used to support, certainly for a head type configuration, is B-axis contouring. Just wasn't possible. Now B-axis contouring is possible on the NTM configuration. Now we intend to extend that support for the B-axis contouring cycle in the other configurations of MTM on future releases. And finally, I'm going to finish off with something that hopefully we all recognize is Nexus. So Nexus is, of course, our platform, our area where we have all our forums. You should be using that, downloading information from Nexus. We now have a free link that takes us into the whiteboard, which enables you to collaborate with colleagues and mark up design sketches from within inside EDGECAM. I'll show you a little bit more about this, but there's some great information on the Nexus help file, the Nexus forum. I'd recommend you have a quick look there. But I'll show you here inside our software demonstration. All right, so this is the item where I was talking about more data. So here we have quite a baby part really. We've got 3 different components here, but if you notice the information that's loaded back into so we never had that amount of information. All the stock, all the fixtures, even the components could have different names. So everything is to be thoroughly named so everybody knows. There's no ambiguity. If we go into the feature tree and let's have a look at stock, you'll see now that we've got an extra comment for stock. So everywhere we go, we're able to give it more data and more information. If the fixtures have come from the fixture manager, fixture database, you may notice some of the names that have been used inside the databases, they too wash through. So you might notice some of these names I've used inside my particular setup, which is the Kurt Weiss. And of course, all this information comes through inside the property window as well. And lots of people will be using the property window for Strategy Manager. As soon as they look inside properties, which is where features live, they see that data appearing. So you'll see over here the drive plate. I can just put a different name in here. And you'll see how that washes back through into the property window as well. So just more data, more information, and more control over the setup makes life an awful lot more easier. Nice, quick, easy one to finish off is on the MTM setup. Multitask machining. But previously, we just simply weren't able to do this. It's a nice, easy demonstration. We now have the B-axis contouring cycle. So this is a cycle that's in our ultimate turning license. It's able to track the shape of the part. So this would have been perfectly supportable on an EDGECAM ATC machine tool, but not an MTM machine tool. So this is the first of the generation that we'll see in these particular configurations. There is the, we see that particular cycle racing down on a head, the B-axis head table machine tool. Last little item to talk about is that we have the Nexus design review on the whiteboard. Top right hand side, you've got a little click. You can begin to create a collaborative view of what we see here and broadcast it to colleagues. If I create a design review, give it a name, create it, and I'm going to ask my colleagues to join me. So I'll just put my email address in here. If I can type, I think that looks right. Yes, you can invite me to a meeting. So my colleague now would receive that particular meeting update. And what I can do is say, yeah, I want to be able to show you a little problem that I've got on this component. It could be a size, it could be a particular area. Just open it up in the web. A little bit of a tutorial when you open it. But yeah, I've now got that component and I'm sharing it throughout my organization with colleagues who don't have EDGECAM, but I'm now able to talk about the problem that I've got with this component or whatever it may be. So this collaborative viewer is an excellent way of talking to colleagues, non-technical colleagues as well. We can mark up these prints, discard that, or we could even measure. Oh, look, we've got the height from here to here. That's going to be a little bit too much for us. We take screenshots of this as well. We can do almost everything with this collaborative viewer. So I would recommend just try and use that. It's quite a nice tool to use. Especially obviously you can't have everybody using EDGECAM, but it's nice to be able to share the shape and the part that you've got a project on. So we're not done bad for time, 11:14. not many questions coming in, so clearly hopefully I've answered all the questions as we've gone along. But of course, I've left my email there just dwelling a little bit. If anybody does have any questions about today's webinar or anything that you've seen inside EDGECAM, by all means, reach out to me, or any of your technical or sales teams would be more than happy to connect with you. But in the meantime, yeah, thank you for sharing these past number of minutes looking at EDGECAM 2025, and I wish you a fond farewell. Thank you very much for attending today's webinar.